Reported by naturallymoi.com. Racist flight attendant almost let man die because she didn't believe black woman was a doctor. Racism strikes again. A flight attendant on a Delta flight almost let a man die because of her own prejudice. Tamika Cross was on a Delta flight when a man started screaming for help. That's when, as an OBGYN from Houston, she rightfully stood up and was going to attempt to help the man before a racist, prejudiced, backwards flight attendant, yes, this is America, believe it, told her to take a seat and that they were calling for, quote, real doctors. And then when Tamika said she was an OBGYN from Houston, the flight attendant had the nerve to ask her why was she in Detroit and where are her credentials. Now, I am paraphrasing. I'll read you the whole post from Tamika that she posted on Facebook below. But the man survived, and the flight attendant ended up needing her help, and Tamika gave it to her to save the man's life. But the point is, this is 2016, y'all. Don't these people know that black people go to medical school too and work in the health profession too? Have they never heard of Morehouse Medical School, Morehouse Hospital in DC? Now, you may read this and say, well, how do you know it had to do with race? Because you know some of y'all out there. Well, Tamika said a white man came on the scene after they asked again for the doctors any doctors aboard the flight, and that's when the flight attendant looked at her and said, "We have a doctor on site now that has his credentials." With an attitude, of course. But Tamika said the guy never showed the flight attendant any credentials. See, what the flight attendant was really referencing by credentials was his white skin. Let's be completely honest, people. We know how this shit works. She looked at the black woman and thought, you possibly can't be a doctor, especially if Tamika wasn't sitting in first class and looking a certain way, because you know us Americans, we have these beliefs of what people from certain professions look like anyway. I'm going to tell you though, I really think it's astounding that this flight attendant almost let this man die because of her racism, prejudice, and need to be right, rightfully ignorant, that is. Every minute this woman questioned Tamika could have been every minute this man needed to be tended to survive. And this woman didn't even care about the man enough to put her prejudice to the side. If you're on a plane and a person says they're a doctor, wouldn't you let them help this person? You're on a fucking plane, and who knows when you may land. It may be too late for them then. But you rather let your ignorance prevail and let someone else suffer for it. I truly believe there is a high level of narcissism that most racist people possess because this woman, what she did was completely selfish. No way around that. Thank God the other doctor came onto the scene, and thank God Tamika wasn't petty. And like most black people do, she put her own feelings aside to help someone in need. This man who Tamika helped save is truly lucky she is not as petty and self-centered as the flight attendant that almost let him die was. Here's Tamika's full post about the situation. She said on Facebook, I'm sure many of my fellow young corporate America working women of color can all understand my frustration when I say I'm sick of being disrespected. Was on a Delta flight DL945 and someone 2 rows in front of me was screaming for help. Her husband was unresponsive. I naturally jumped into doctor mode as no one else was getting up, unbuckle my seatbelt, and throw my tray table up. And as I'm about to stand up, flight attendant says, everyone stay calm. It's just the night terror. He is all right. I continue to watch the scene closely. A couple minutes later, he is unresponsive again, and the flight attendant yells, call overhead for a physician on board. I raised my hand to grab her attention. She said to me, quote, oh no, sweetie, put your hand down. We are looking for actual physicians or nurses or some type of medical personnel. We don't have time to talk to you. End quote. I tried to inform her that I was a physician, but I was continually cut off by condescending remarks. Then overhead, they paged any physician on board, please press your button. I stare at her as I go to press my button. She said, oh, wow, you're an actual physician, quote. I reply, yes. She said, let me see your credentials. What type of doctor are you? Where do you work? Why were you in Detroit? Please remember, this man is still in need of help and she is blocking my road from even standing up while bombarding me with questions. I respond, quote, OBGYN work in Houston, in Detroit for a wedding, but believe it or not, they do have doctors in Detroit. Now, excuse me so I can help this man in need. Another, quote, seasoned white male approaches the row and says he is physician as well. She says to me, thanks for your help, but he can help us. He said he has his credentials. Mind you, he hasn't shown anything to her, just showed up and fit the, quote, description of a doctor. I stayed seated, mind blown, blood boiling. Man is responding to his questions and is seemingly better now, thank God. Then this heifer has the nerve to ask for my input on what to do next about 10 minutes later. I tell her we need vitals and blood sugar. She comes back to report to me a BP of 80, 50, super low to my non-medical peeps, and they can't find a glutometer. We continue down that pathway of medical workup, but the point is, she needed my help, and I continued to help despite the choice words I had saved up for her. The patient and his wife weren't the problem. They needed help, and we were mid-flight. She came and apologized to me several times and offered me Sky Miles. I kindly refused. This is going higher than her. I don't want Sky Miles in exchange for blatant discrimination. Whether this was race, age, gender discrimination, it's not right. She will not get away with this, and I will still get my Sky Miles. This is Jen Nicole from naturallymoi.com. Thank you guys for listening.